Hey Canonites. There's really not much more to talk about in regards to Halo Infinite this week. No new story news, and the rumors that have popped up have been pretty much debunked. However, there are two major questions still left over from Sunday's teaser, and I want to address these today. One is a bit more personal, and the other is something that could have some major story implications. As the title implies, I want to talk about the Chief's armor, specifically how 343 might explain the change, and the AI chip at the end of the trailer. So first, the armor. Let's all of us, especially me, put our feelings aside on this change or past changes. What ultimately matters to me is that this change is explained. Despite what I've said on social media, this change can make sense in-game, and there's one, I think, fairly simple explanation that could cover this and any other changes. Halo Infinite, near as we can tell, is set around May 27th, 2560, per a date seen on this Pelican cockpit display. That's about 19 months after the end of Halo 5 Guardians and nearly a year after Halo Wars 2's Awakening the Nightmare DLC. 19 months is plenty of time for a lot to happen, for tech to break down and need replacing. We see a downed Pelican and a Warthog chassis underwater, so the UNSC is losing stuff to this war. So I think, as have others, that since the end of Halo 5, Chief's upgraded Mjolnir could have simply become too damaged to repair, especially with Cortana's created likely controlling a number of locations that would have the necessary equipment and resources to repair a custom suit of Mjolnir like John's, or maybe repair Mjolnir at all depending on the amount of damage. So if this were the case, it's entirely probable that the UNSC would have to give him something that they had lying around, maybe on Infinity or maybe something recovered from some other site. Whatever the source, they either took an old suit of Mjolnir Mark 6, gave it a workover to be compatible with Gen 2 systems, and handed it off to John, or they had a suit of Gen 2 that was made to resemble Gen 1 Mark 6 and handed it off to John. I would personally go with the latter, as if you look at the way Gen 1 Mark 6 appears in Halo 4 and 5, the new helmet seems to be something of a mix between that and classic Mark 6. Now I'm sure some people are wondering why I think there's any Gen 2 tech involved at all with this suit. Well, two reasons. One, the AI port on the back of the helmet is designed in a way that was specifically introduced with 343 designs and is thus very distinctly Gen 2. And two, as far as we know, Spartan abilities are still around. Integrated thrusters weren't a part of baseline Mark 6, so if they are still present, whatever John is wearing would have to have been upgraded to meet Gen 2 standards. Again, assuming that does stay in the game. But this is all speculation for now. If my basic theory that newer tech is breaking down after a long fight and the means to repair it are limited holds true, that could have some very widespread consequences on the looks of various things. If Blue Team are still major characters, and I really hope they are, what might they look like if they are also in upgraded Gen 1 tech, or as I'm sure some might put it, are in the classic art style? And what about Spartan 4s? Regarding the latter, I'd love to see some of them still sporting Gen 2 designs, notably stuff from Halo 4, but damaged and broken, maybe some in Gen 1 suits or even armorless, showing how little the UNSC has to work with in the era of the created. Before moving on to the next subject, I want to address another theory that's been making the rounds to explain the return to classic Mark 6. There are a few variations on this, but it ultimately always breaks down to this. John had to revert to an earlier build of Mjolnir because Gen 2 tech, or his suit specifically, was vulnerable to Cortana. Now, there is some logic to this. Cortana completely redesigned the Chief's suit when he was in cryo between Halo 3 and Halo 4. Not just the armor shell, but the firmware as well. Firmware is a type of software.
Bringing your systems online now. I rewrote your suit's firmware while you were out.
You've been busy.
This line from Halo 4 largely seems to be about the Chief's HUD, but let's assume it was for more than just that. A safe assumption if you ask me. Cortana would know John's armor much better than possibly even Halsey, and that doesn't even take into account her time interfacing with the suit in the original trilogy. Further, in Halo Last Light, the Archeon class in Scylla Intrepid Eye was able to get into Fred 104's Mjolnir and control it. While Halsey states in Halo The Fall of Reach that Cortana wouldn't be able to control John's Mjolnir, given her knowledge of the systems, but more importantly the power and access to Forerunner technology granted by the domain, I think it's very likely that Cortana could hack and control John's Mjolnir. However, there are still some flaws with this theory. Yes, John's Gen 2 Mark 6 mod is theoretically vulnerable to an AI takeover in some capacity, but there's no reason to suspect that Gen 1 Mark 6 wouldn't be. The armor Intrepid Eye hacks in Halo Last Light is potentially a version of Gen 1 Mark 6 despite what the cover may make one think. Allow me to explain. Upon returning to Earth after the events of Halo First Strike just before Halo 2, Fred 104, Linda 058, John 117, and Will 043 were all upgraded to the Mark 6 platform. However, unlike John, Fred and Linda were given variants that included prototype elements, many of which would form the basis for Gen 2. Or in other words, Fred's Mark 6 looked almost exactly like his Gen 2 Centurion that he wears in Halo 5. This can be seen in the Halo 2 Anniversary Terminal Unyielding and in Halo Mythos, which illustrates a scene when Fred is stuck in the Onyx Shield world before he'd have a chance to upgrade to Gen 2. Following Blue Team's recovery from said Shield world, Fred and the rest of Blue Team, along with some Spartan 3s, were immediately redeployed to other worlds on other missions. Halo Last Light is set in July of 2553, just 5 months after Blue Team escaped the Shield world. I'd argue it's entirely possible, maybe even probable, that Fred at this point is still wearing his prototype Mark 6. And given that both Tom B292 and Lucy B091 are wearing spy armor in Last Light, I'd argue this further supports the notion that Fred had not yet upgraded, especially since both were later given Mjolnir. So to sum it up, Mark 6 would still be vulnerable to AI intrusion. I would assume that this is due to the suits having the capability to interface and support an AI, a feature introduced in the second iteration of Mark 5. If this is indeed the case, Spartans would have to revert to either the first iteration of Mark 5, aka the version worn by Noble Team, or to Mark 4, and even then this isn't a guarantee of any perceived safety or immunity from AI intrusion. In short, I don't think the theory holds any water. But as always, let me know what you think of both these theories in the comments below, or perhaps any other theory you might have. Moving on, our next topic has to do with the potential identity of the AI that John is plugging into his helmet at the end of this teaser. First, we have to assume this isn't some nostalgia bait or something, which I could easily see this being, given that this wasn't technically a trailer but more a tech demo to show the power of the new slipspace engine and something of a mission statement for Halo Infinite. But again, let's assume that this is here for a reason. If it is, who could this AI be? Well, based on my own ideas and some ideas I've sourced from the Halo community, I've come up with a list of potential candidates, some crazier than others. Before we dive in though, I'd like to point out an important fact. The color of the circle at the center of an AI chip is unrelated to the color of an AI's holographic form. For example, Isabel from Halo Wars 2 is orange, but the circle on her AI chip is still blue. So if anyone was hoping to tell the AI by color, that's not going to be useful here. So, to the question, who could it be? We'll start with some potential human AIs. Roland would be the first obvious choice. He's already on board Infinity and has worked with Spartans before. Based on the recent Halo Legendary Crate intel and Halo 5's Warzone multiplayer mode, we know that Sarah Palmer got back to Infinity, which would almost certainly mean that Chief met up with Infinity as well. Roland has worked with Spartans in a limited capacity before in Spartan Ops, and as I recall, it was fairly well received by the community.
Crimson, it's Miller. The commander isn't in the ops center and she's not answering her personal comm.
No worries, Spartan Miller. Commander Palmer's busy, but I'm here. I could run these ops solo, you know.
I'm in charge, Roland. You just be my extra set of eyes.
Oh no, Prometheans!
Roland, settle down.
Isn't that how you always say it?
Tell you what.
So Roland would be a good choice and an available one. Another possibility I thought of was Black Box or BB. He was last seen with Admirals Saren Osman and Terrence Hood in the short story Rossback's World from Halo Fractures. During the created uprising, BB orchestrated the evacuation of Osman, Hood, himself, and several other Oni AI to the secret titular world. BB also appeared in Season 2 of Hunt the Truth and was lauded by fans, so he'd certainly make a fun AI companion. The one major problem with this is that BB was created on August 17, 2552, so by May 2560, BB would be closing in on 8 years of age. AI are normally terminated at 7 years of age due to the risk of rampancy once an AI passes 7 years of operation. Now, 7 isn't a hard number at which AI are guaranteed to start breaking down. It's an average period of reliable operation. AI can operate beyond it to varying degrees. Cortana was functional enough into her 8th year, as was Governor Sloan at 9 years. So BB operating in 2560 isn't absolutely crazy, especially if he was deactivated for a period of time. Speaking of BB, another fun candidate would be the AI created from the mind of Maya Sankar. Maya was an Oni agent undercover as an insurrectionist leader named Pharaoh during Hunt the Truth. She pretended to work with Benjamin Giroux in Season 1 and was the main character for Season 2. Season 2 ultimately ended with her death, and her brain was recovered and used to create a currently nameless AI, which was evaluated by BB. It would be a fun, if somewhat obscure, AI to pair Chief with. Thanks to Renato Fernandez on Twitter for reminding me about this AI, by the way. Another popular AI partner choice I've seen is one already mentioned in this video, Isabel, the logistics AI from the UNSC outposts on the Ark, currently helping the Spirit of Fire fight the Banished. Now the problem with this is that it would mean the UNSC has made contact with the Spirit of Fire, which I personally don't see happening until, at the earliest, the end of Halo Infinite. To be clear, I remain unconvinced that Halo Infinite will be the final entry in the Reclaimer saga, though the game's title certainly can't imply as much. Plus, I much prefer the Jerome and Isabel pairing. Moving on, the next potential human-AI partner is one that would work extremely well as a callback to Halo 4 and present numerous narrative opportunities for 343 to exploit, especially in regards to developing the Chief as a character and properly continuing the themes begun in Halo 4. If you've seen my Halo Infinite trailer breakdown, you'll remember I referenced this scene from Halo 4.
They'll pair you with another AI. Maybe even another Cortana model if Halsey lets them.
That's not going to happen.
It won't be me. You know that, right?
So, what if Chief were paired with another AI created from the cloned brain of Dr. Halsey? Or, as Cortana puts it, another Cortana model. It would certainly work thematically, and to be clear, I'm not saying a carbon copy in any manner of Cortana. As Cortana put it, another Cortana model wouldn't be her. It would have Cortana's origins, it might even share her voice, but it would likely look different and act different in a few ways. However, the major issue I see with this boils down to bringing in another Cortana. After Cortana was brought back from the dead as a villain in Halo 5 and the poor reception over that decision, I can see bringing in another Cortana potentially receiving some backlash, to say the least. It also would seem to conflict with 343's new focus on simple stories, at least in my opinion. Though if they wanted to drop that new focus, I'd be more than okay with it. And speaking of another Cortana, how about an absolutely insane idea? Halsey composing herself and becoming John's new AI. Now I know what you're thinking, where would they get a composer? Well, when I was at 343 during a presentation on the Halo array, there was a moment where it seemed to be implied that all Halos had a composer, even that they played a function in how Halos worked, so the UNSC could potentially have access to one. But again, this is an almost insane idea, almost a nonsensical proposition which I couldn't see happening in a million years. Back to more serious proposals, next up is 343 Guilty Spark, or more accurately, the ancient human known as Chakas. Now, if you haven't read the Forerunner saga, this might sound a little confusing, so allow me to provide the cliff notes. Chakas was an ancient human that lived around 100,000 years ago in the time of the Forerunner Flood War just before the Halos were fired. He and another human, Riser, befriended a young Forerunner named Born Stellar, and all three were eventually whisked away by the Didact after awakening him from a millennium-long meditation in a cryptum on Earth. Eventually, Chakas and Riser were separated from Born Stellar and the Didact, finding themselves trapped on what would become Installation 07. Over the course of his time there, Chakas became gravely injured. By the time he was rescued by Born Stellar, who had effectively become a clone of the original Didact by this time, Chakas was too far gone. To save him, Born Stellar, or the ISO Didact as he was now known, used the composer to transfer Chakas' mind into a monitor shell. At the end of the Forerunner Flood War, as the rings were being prepared for distribution across the galaxy, Chakas was made monitor of Installation 04, most of his memories sealed away, and given the designation 343 Guilty Spark. 100,000 years later, well, we saw what happened in Halo 3. However, as revealed in Halo Primordium, Spark wasn't completely destroyed, just barely hanging on. In late 2553, a signal from the Ark was detected, and a ship, the UNSC Rubicon, dispatched to find the source. Remote contact teams found the nearly destroyed chassis of Spark and brought him to the Rubicon. On board, it was discovered that Spark's memories had reawakened. He detailed the story of his time on Installation 07 to the ONI teams on board before taking over the ship, knocking out the crew, and leaving to find the Librarian. Myself and others have been waiting for Chakas to reappear since 2012, and I think Halo Infinite would be the perfect place to bring him back in, especially given his connection to Installation 07. And you could certainly have some fun pairing John up with an AI that's tried to kill him twice before. But hell, even if John's new AI weren't Chakas, I'd love to see him return in Infinite. However, this, regardless of what manner Chakas appears in, presents some problems. First is the simpler stories thing again, but second, in the same statement where 343 talked about a focus on simpler stories, they also talked about keeping games and books in their own, quote, swim lanes. Basically, games would only deal with other games, books only dealing with other books, with little crossover. While I think bringing in Chakas could be easily explained, granted with a bit of an exposition dump, I do think it could be done. But as said, it would seem to fly in the face of 343's new directives. Next up, how about Mendicant Bias? This is an AI many fans, book readers or not, have been eager to see make an appearance. To this day, I remain convinced that he was the one to summon Spirit of Fire to the Ark, and he'd be a great character to oppose Cortana. Of course, the problem is that he remains on the Ark, meaning the UNSC would have to retrieve him. Unless through some convoluted means he found his way to Installation 07 or something, but I don't see that happening. And on the note of Mendicant Bias, Offensive Bias would be another fun choice. We don't really know what happened to him following the Forerunner Flood War, so he could appear just about anywhere without much need for an explanation. But honestly, I don't really see either Bias appearing in this game. Maybe Mendicant indirectly, but not offensive. Finally, I want to talk about a theory proposed by my friend Brendan Lowry of Windows Central. In his article breaking down the Halo Infinite reveal, he made a pretty in-depth analysis of the AI chip scene and who this AI could be. Before we dive in, I highly encourage you to read the article for yourself. I have left a link in the description box, and if I can, I'm going to try and leave one at the top right corner of this video. So please, check it out. Done? Okay. So, the theory breaks down like this. In the Halo Escalation Library Edition Volume 1, the included commentary notes that the Song of Roland, an ancient poem, could be used for hints at the story going forward. Simply put, the story tells of the knight Roland, who is betrayed by his comrade Ganelon, who kills Roland in battle. However, Ganelon was left weakened, allowing Charlemagne to kill Ganelon. In the poem, Roland's sword was named Durandal. According to legend, the original Cortana, the Sword of Mercy, was said to have an engraving that read, "My name is Cortana, of the same steel and temper as Joyeuse and Durandal." Joyeuse, by the way, was the name of Charlemagne's sword. And interestingly, when confronting the Warden Eternal and Dominion Splinter from Tales from Slipspace, Cortana actually quotes the same passage, even adding, "Roland himself could not break such steel." A close inspection of the AI chip in the trailer found that there was a serial number, seemingly that of an AI's, and the last character looked to be a D. This is the connection to Durandal. So the theory is that Roland would fuse with or become an AI named Durandal, taking the fight to Cortana and weakening him. Chief, playing the part of Charlemagne, would then finish her off, ending the created threat. Now, this is a well put together theory, but I personally feel it has some holes. First, the AI serial number. The one identifiable character looks like a D in the lighting, but it's upside down, which would make it the first character in a serial number. This conflicts with established AI serial numbers, which are usually 3 letters, forming an abbreviation of the AI's name, 4 numbers, then 1 number. For example, Cortana's is
Number CTN 0452-9.
Roland's is RLD 0205-4, and Serena's was SNA 1292-4. This format has been consistent for all known serial numbers for UNSC Smart AI. Dumb AI could be an exception, but not in any manner that matches with the serial numbers on the chip. The one military Dumb AI serial number we know of was for Auntie Dot in Halo Reach, and it matches Smart AI serial numbers, ADT 6849-9. The Superintendent from Halo 3 ODST has a very non-standard number, but it obviously doesn't match. In here, NM means New Mombasa, and EAP means East African Protectorate, by the way. Another AI from the assembly has a different serial number format, but again, it doesn't match what we see on the chip. Plus, this is an AI from 2415, so serial number formats could have changed by the 26th century. So basically, an AI serial number starting with a single letter just doesn't work. Further, to me, the D actually looks like a 0. It certainly looks like a D from the right angle, but I'm confident this is a result of the lighting and partial blur. If this were a 0, that would make it at the end of a serial number, which, combined with the blurry 4 characters before it, would match the format of a UNSC AI serial number. Now, I'm sure some are asking if any known AI have serial numbers that end in a 0. The only one I was able to find was an AI named Turkish TRK2165-0, who was mentioned in the intel for the 4th Series 2 Legendary Crate. I doubt this is the AI we're looking for. And of course, as far as we know, it's not standard for an AI chip to have a serial number of the AI that it's holding on it. It's certainly never been spotted in any available images of AI chips, and believe me, developers could have added this detail if they wanted to, even as far back as Halo CE. However, it's also possible that a printed serial number is a feature of newer AI chips. A comparison of this new chip to Cortana's shows that the new one is simpler and smoother, though shares notably similar design language. So, whoever this AI is, it's potentially a new one we haven't met before, which would work with 2 of the options I presented in this video. Whoever this AI is though, I do hope that it will play into Cortana's line from Halo 4 that I played earlier, and ultimately into the exploration of Chief's character and humanity, and what it means to be human. I will say though, there could still be something to Roland himself being a key to defeating Cortana. There's a cut cinematic for Halo 5 that was featured in one of Halo 5's Sprint episodes, which had Cortana meeting with Roland on a Halo ring. It's impossible to say what the context was, but the scene always felt like Cortana and Roland weren't allies. At some point I'll have to dive into the Song of Roland too, see what I can find, but that's another day. So, what do you think of the options presented here for a new AI for John? What seems likely to you, and who would you pick if it were up to you? Let me know in the comments below. E3 is almost at an end, but we have one more video this week. Next time we'll be diving into the history of Installation 07 and what that could mean for the story of Halo Infinite. And if there are any other videos related to Infinite, or not related to Infinite, just Halo in general, that you'd like to see, let me know about those too. Except book reviews. I'm trying to get those going again, I promise. Thanks for watching as always, and until next time, this has been Halo Canon. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing, and if you really love me, hit that notification bell and leave a thumbs up. These both really help out the channel. I wouldn't be where I am now without your views and support, so once again, thank you. Keep on being awesome, Canonites.